Strength, like no other trait line, pinpoints the sheer frustrating negligence of Warrior's design, boasting number of steroid that put bodybuilding world championship out of commission and near to no utility at all, ending up with trait line that's more one note than a piano with a single key. Reckless dodge does damage, or rather makes a dodge do damage and grant might. It isn't much damage, but it's a good way to get rid of blindness or ages while you approach your enemy. Brave Stride is an effect of some tragic misunderstanding. It grants stability on use of movement skill, effectively being less toxic, less exploitable, and less faulty version of Stalwart Strength. Unfortunately, Brave Stride has 10 seconds low cooldown, while Stalwart Strength effectively has none. This makes Brave Stride in versus modes where it could shine comparable to not running a trait at all, while in PvE it allows for near-permanent stability upkeep. Mobs in open world aren't known for their CC, and in raids you have more potent sources of stability. Meanwhile in versus modes, where Warrior can already generate a shice load of stability by being a cunt, or where we gave permanent stability upkeep to Engineer for an overwhelming trade-off of holding out an engineering kit, somehow this needs a cooldown. Restorative Strength grants might for casting your healing skill. Its best utilization is synergy with Might Makes Right. Besides that, in PvE, where Might is most often capped, this is useless, and in PvP, you never heal in your opponent's bloody face, so that bloody boon isn't even that bloody useful. Peak Performance grants percentage damage boost that increases after you use a physical skill. If there was anything to write home about this one, I'd certainly do so, but unfortunately this trait is so plain it gets a free parking spot on the airport. Building Momentum restores endurance on every burst skill hit, allowing you to be more liberal with your dodges and encouraging the offensive ones, which Reckless Dodge makes do damage. Body Blows applies weakness and bleeding to any target we control. However, both Strength itself and Warrior's CC heavy builds are strike damage focused, while Warrior's few Condi builds have no business running Strength at all and are on the lower side when it comes to disables. Therefore, only part of this trait that is useful for a player with upwards of 2 brain cells is weakness application, which isn't anything to scoff at, don't get me wrong, but isn't enough of a selling point either when compared to traits in the same column. Forceful Greatsword grants power and 50% chance to gain might on critical hit, both of which are doubled while wielding a Greatsword. By the time of making this video, Forceful Greatsword also reduces cooldown of Greatsword skills, which has a side effect of preventing Warrior's Greatsword builds from utilizing Railing of Fireworks. Great Fortitude grants ferocity and vitality, based on percentage of power. There is less to say about that than about peak performance, and that means trait is as deep as a cutting board. Pinnacle of Strength makes Might grant you additional power. The number of plain jokes I could fit into this video rivals the potential of War Thunder. Moving on. Berserker's Power grants stacking damage buff based on adrenaline spent every time you land a best skill. So, Warrior must first get into combat, gather necessary resource, land a specific ability, and only then he can benefit from Berserker's Power. On top of which, with one exemption, landing a burst skill isn't a guarantee, and between blindness, hard blocks, soft blocks, ages, distortion, evasion, dodges, and your enemy just keeping the bloody distance, this trait is unreliable at best, as you can get trolled out of your hard-earned reward by anything slightly faster than Murasat Overseer. Might Makes Right grants endurance and healing anytime you gain might from any source. Maybe that's no poetry nor anything mind-blowingly creative, but at least it's not another plain damage steroid. Unstoppable Onslaught does fall in the same vein where Stalwart Strength resides. It further cements outcome of easy fights while doing next to nothing in situations where Warrior struggles, while also being completely useless in PvE on top of that due to quickness already being handled better by different sources. Effectively, this trait is a shiny giant middle finger raised towards both Warrior himself and poor silvers that struggle with dodging Earthshaker on reaction. If you paid attention, you realized probably that endurance generation and healing from one trait is only meaningful utility strength as a whole provides, if not counting the overwhelmingly pathetic 3 unique boons and 2 different conditions we have access to through this trait line, from which grand total of 1 is even close to significance. If you take the utility route in strength, you get roughly as good of a benefit as you get from defense's minor traits alone. Only reason strength is ever played is for damage steroid in instanced PvE encounters. Strength is so plain, so mid, so shallow, so uninspired that in its current state it could be completely replaced with equipable 30% damage buff, and warrior as a class wouldn't even budge, because outside of damage, strength is completely put to shame by other trait lines that come with better utility, 1 or 2 damage traits on top of that, and added benefit of not having to run strength. Crapface out.